and south of Manchester, Doherty Ferry, Big Bend area. A little busy after that. Transform your home with the beauty and durability of James Hardie Siding. At Siding Express, we specialize in James Hardie Siding installation. Visit sidingexpress.com today to schedule a free consultation. That's sidingexpress.com. I'm Roger Brand in the michaelsflooringoutlet.com Traffic Center.
News, traffic, and the latest on the Redbirds. This is the Redbird Rush Hour on KMOX.
Redbird Rush Hour on a Monday evening on KMOX. Nate Gatter with you, along with Bernie Miklasz. Bernie, it is the All-Star break for the players, no All-Star break for you. We're going to be counting on you for all the breakdown from what was a frustrating weekend, I think, at Busch Stadium for the Cardinals, dropping a couple of one-run games to the Braves. Thankfully for us all, they managed to salvage something on Sunday, or the tenor of this show and this break might be quite a bit different. Let's start with the positives from Sunday in the Cardinals rallying from 3-1 down in the fifth inning, got the two-run double from Wilson Contreras, got the two-run homer from Jose Fermin, and ultimately held on to win the game 5-4. Ryan Helsley got his 19th save, and it was a good moment for not only the clutch hitting, but also the bullpen bouncing back after a real blow in Saturday's loss.
Yeah, first of all, Nate, it's good to be with you, to talk with you again. It's been a while. I think that loss yesterday kind of reaffirmed something that we believe about this team. Many of us believe about this team, which is there are times they look really bad. There are times that they let things kind of get away with them, but it's a team that's going to fight you for as long as a game's going on. And if a game's within reach, and sometimes even when a game's not reasonably in reach, they'll still keep coming at you. And listen, I'm really not overreacting to the Fermin home run, because since they called him up, he's done nothing but hit. And I would say with Sajaci up here and with Fermin providing a spark off the bench, and Pozo becoming much more prominent off the bench, or just as a really good right-handed bat against left-handed pitchers, maybe to start at catcher against left-handed pitchers, I think their depth is getting stronger. I think they've stretched their bench out a bit. I think we saw that yesterday in that game. And you mentioned the bullpen. I think the bullpen has been the best thing about the bullpen, other than, listen, the guys that are counted on to pitch high leverage have done a good job. Helsley's not the same guy, but he's still a good reliever. But the Cardinals have really extended their bullpen depth with guys like Riley O'Brien and Matt Swanson and Gordon Graceffo, and who else? I'm missing one of them in there somewhere. I think that's about it. There's about 3 or 4 young relievers who were not a factor before this season, who have actually shown that they can be trusted, and they're doing pretty well. And that's really a bonus for a team that's going to have to pitch real well over the final 65 games of the season, not just the starters, but the bullpen.
I like where you were going with that, not only with the young relievers who are moving into bigger roles, but also going back to your comments about some of the players extending the Cardinals bench, if you will, the Sajacis and the Fermins of the world, and Pozo for that matter too. And I wonder, because there are kind of two big factors here as we lead up to the trade deadline, which is now just over 2 weeks away. And obviously that was always the day, in my mind, that was really the end of the Cardinals' first season. And the deadline was going to determine what the last 2 months were. But essentially the Cardinals were playing this as the first 2/3 of the year and then the back third of the year. And there are two factors. The biggest one is the one we always talk about, which is where are you in the standings? And the Cardinals are in at least a marginally worse position now than they were 2 weeks ago relative to what kind of ambition they might want to show at the deadline. But the other piece is, who else is playing if you trade off some guys? How do you feel about the guys? Are you thinking if we trade Ryan Helsley, great, now there are opportunities for other relievers? Or are you thinking if we trade Ryan Helsley, oh no, one of these other jokers has to pitch? And that maybe is moving in a positive direction over the last couple of weeks with the way some of the younger guys on both sides of the ball have stepped up. So how do you kind of evaluate both of those factors and how they might even rub up against one another as you start to look toward the deadline?
It's a tough question, and only John Mozeliak knows what approach he'll take based on where the team is 2 or 3 days before the trade deadline. I think, since you asked for my opinion, I think the Cardinals have to be realistic here. we can get into this later, because I don't want to have an overly long answer, which I tend to do anyway. But I'm not trying to be, a negative guy at all, but I'm a pragmatist, and I think I'm realistic. There's a lot of things working against the Cardinals, even though they're a game and a half out of a wild card spot. So if you're John Mozeliak and you have a chance to trade assets, and we're talking about Helsley, we're talking about Matz, we're talking about Phil Maton. I think Eric Fetty's value is pretty much shot, but you can still trade assets. And I think with those relievers, because people are so desperate for relievers, I think you can get a good return for them. What you would get, I have no idea, but I think the value would be good, and it would really give your team a lift going into 26 and 27 as you start to regenerate under Heim Bloom. Now, people say, well, wait a minute, you can't bail out on the season if you're, say you're towards a trade deadline and you're 2.5 games out of a spot. And that would be wishful thinking on my part. I'd be delighted if that happens. But the Cardinals were in a similar position last year at the deadline. They were right there in a wild card spot, and they made two really good moves. At the time, they were really good moves, getting Fetty and Tommy Pham. And then they just fell apart like the first couple of weeks of August, and they were out of it. And then so what happens? Well, Tommy Edman would not have been a Cardinal beyond 2025. He really wasn't in their plans. I had no problem with them trading Tommy Edman, but he was still an asset. And as you look at it now, the moves didn't pay off, even though the thinking behind them were really good. You didn't have anything to show for it. So if Mo gets it close, if the Cardinals are close, Mo risks sort of keeping what he has, maybe making a minor upgrade. And then if you get to the playoffs, that's a good thing. But if you get booted out of the playoffs pretty quickly, you will have missed an opportunity to trade in assets. And if you don't make the playoffs and you held on to all those guys, then you've really kind of squandered an opportunity to strengthen your team in the future. I know it's a long answer, but that's kind of how I see it.
No, I think there's a lot to chew on there. And one of the things, look, from where I sit right now, barring winning 6 out of 7 or, 8 out of 10 or whatever coming out of the All-Star break, I feel like Ryan Helsley almost has to be moved. Because I agree with you that he's not the same guy that he was, but the discussion around him and what at least folks in the media seem to perceive as his value in other markets has not dropped nearly as much as I feel the perception of him in St. Louis has dropped. And now, obviously, the media are not necessarily representative of the sharp guys who are in front offices around the league. It's not to say that you're going to pull the wool over somebody's eyes, but the exact time, ideally, to trade a player is when his value on the market is maybe 20% higher than it really should be. And if there's any Cardinal right now who I think might have a better market than where his ability really is, it's probably Ryan Helsley because of the name value that he still has.
And he was the best reliever in the National League last year. He had a career season and then some. He was fantastic. Just an amazing season. And he still throws 99, sometimes goes over 100 with his four-seam fastball. So even though he's blown more saves than he did all of last year, even though his strikeout rate down, his swing and miss rate is down, even though he is walking more hitters than he has, all of his indicators, the arrow's pointing down. And the worst thing of all is I really don't care how hard a guy throws. I mean, hitters are destroying his four-seam fastball this year. They're hitting over 400 against it, and they're slugging over 500 against it because he changed his arm angle for whatever reason, and the pitches are coming in flat. Yeah, they're 99 or 100, but they're flat. They don't have any movement. Now, that said, there are some really shrewd front offices out there that are much more deeper and advanced and intelligent about the use of analytics, and they can use analytics to make people better. I know that there's got to be some teams out there that say, our people are really, really smart, and they have found this or that about Helsley, and we can make some adjustments, and all of a sudden that four-seam fastball will be much more effective. So I think teams interested in him will put their faith in that type of thinking. And yeah, I do think that there will be a good price someone's willing to pay because there's a lot of really good teams out there that think they can go all the way, but they're missing that one guy in the bullpen that can help them with that.
It's funny that you talk about the analytics teams that might say we can tweak something and get him back to his 2024 form, because if they weren't just a few games behind where they probably would like to be right now, I was going to say Ryan Helsley screams Tampa Bay Ray. Right now, everything about him says, let's go and get a guy who's inexpensive. We can tweak something and get this best reliever in baseball quality guy down the stretch. They're probably just a couple games out of where they feel especially with how good the American League looks. They're probably just a little bit behind where they'd want to be buyers, but there are plenty of other teams who fit into that category and could make a move like that. Is there anybody else who stands out in your mind as, even if the Cardinals are, let's say, in that third wild card spot coming to the deadline, who you think still might be moved, even if the Cardinals don't view themselves as full-on sellers?
Well, I've advocated the idea of trading Lars Nootbaar because he would have value. He's a StatCast king, and there's a lot of front offices that have been trying to get him. The Dodgers were trying to get him a couple years ago. They look at all the metrics, and he really is a metrics all-star. It has not translated into actual results. And I think, the Cardinals have a AAA outfielder who they drafted, Nathan Church, who is just destroying it down in Memphis, and he's getting closer and closer and closer to St. Louis. He draws a lot of walks. He's got great plate discipline. He's got surprisingly good power because he's not a huge guy. He's got a quick bat. He gets, really terrific exit velocities. He doesn't swing at junk. I mean, he is one of the fast risers among major league prospects right now, and he's on target to be in St. Louis in 2026. They're going to have to thin out some of these log jams they have. And the reason I bring up Nootbaar, it's not that I dislike Nootbaar. I'm just thinking pragmatically. He is someone that other teams, at least in the past, have kind of salivated about. Now, that said, he gets hurt. And here, I don't mean to laugh, but here we are, we're 14 days away from or 16 days away from the trade deadline, and he's back on the IL again, which obviously is not going to help his trade value. And I really do believe the Cardinals would look at something like that. I'm confident that they would field offers for him if people are interested. So we'll see what will happen. I don't know how they thin out the middle infield. I just can't imagine that they would give up Gorman right now, because since May 26th, he's been one of their best performers, and he's a little streaky, but the mad power is there, and his plate discipline is not great, but it's much better than it was last season.
Yeah, all of those interesting ideas, and I think the needing to thin out a bit of a logjam, that's a conversation that we've had in some form or fashion about the Cardinals, it feels like, over and over and over again for years, and I've got an all-star game tie-in for that. We'll talk about that when we come back. The Redbird Rush Hour continues after this on KMOX.
Diabetes, high blood pressure, anxiety meds, everyone's on them.
management, and activities. The Terrace is affordable and will work with your Medicaid plan. Go to rspseniorliving.com and look for the Terrace Private Assisted Living.
You're listening to the Redbird Rush Hour on 1041 KMOX.
Redbird Rush Hour continues on this Monday evening. Nate Gatter, Bernie Miklasz back with you. I promised an all-star game tie-in to our discussion in the last segment about the Cardinals having maybe a little bit of a logjam in the outfield looming. Bernie was talking about potentially moving Lars Nootbaar with Nathan Church waiting in Memphis to probably make his way to the major leagues at some point in the next year or so. And what that made me think of is the fact that there are 7 major league teams that have only one player represented at the All-Star game that will be played in Atlanta tomorrow night. They are, of course, the Cardinals, along with the Angels, Marlins, Orioles, Pirates, Rangers, Rockies, and White Sox. And if you're listening closely to those, you might have picked up that the Cardinals are the only team out of that group with a winning record. Everybody else who sent only one All-Star has a losing record. And on the one hand, you could make the argument maybe that means the Cardinals have a balanced lineup. They have a lot of different guys who can provide for them. They've had different guys who have picked up the slack at different times, like we mentioned with Nolan Gorman, who got off to that dreadful start to the year, but has been arguably the Cardinals' best hitter over the last 6-7 weeks. Certainly he's been among the top hitters in the lineup. They've gotten different contributions from different guys in the bullpen at times. But on the other hand, is it that same narrative that we've looked at from many different angles over what feels like the better part of a decade now with the Cardinals, which is they have a lot of good players and they don't have enough great players?
Nate, that's exactly how I see it. Listen, I try to take out what's I don't know the phrase here, what I want to use. I try not to be a homer, I guess is the best way to put it, because I appreciate a lot of guys on the Cardinals team. I really appreciate the one All-Star they do have is Brendan Donovan. But if you want to be really candid about this and just sort of take any kind of affiliation to the Cardinals away from this, even from a media standpoint, they just don't have dudes. They just don't have guys where you look at that lineup, for example, and you say, wow, how are we? There's like 3 or 4 guys that can just crush you. I mean, wow, that's an intimidating line. They don't have that. You look at their rotation, there's one guy who can strike anybody out, and that's Sonny Gray. And Matthew Libator, who, by the way, I like very much, his strikeout rate has collapsed in his last 7 or 8 starts, utterly collapsed. They don't have swing and miss stuff. They don't have guys like Paul Skeens, like Mizorowski, the kid in Milwaukee, and there's any number of guys I could mention who just have that charisma, that nastiness. People want to watch him pitch, and people are like, "Wow!" They don't have the wow factor. They really don't. And until they start to increase their supply of dudes who do have that, not only their elite status, but they have an effect on the other team when those teams, it's like the old Tony La Russa teams. You look in the dugout or you look on the field before the game and you're saying, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me with that talent they have everywhere? The Cardinals don't have it, and it's going to take time to regenerate it. And so I think it's more about that. And I'll also say this too, is the All-Star game has become really frustrating to me. And it's just simply because so many guys bail out of it. So when the original teams came out, like the Brewers only had one guy, Freddie Peralta. But then I'm exaggerating for effect, but like 25 National League pitchers said, no, thank you. I don't want to pitch in the All-Star game. And so they had to keep adding guys. So sometimes it's hard to distinguish what's a real All-Star or not because there's so many fill-ins, right?
Yeah, you mentioned Jacob Mizorowski. He ended up in the All-Star game. He's pitched in 5 games in the major leagues. And
he is a star, right?
He is a star. And I feel kind of bad for him because then he's become almost the face of this phenomenon. It's not his fault that 1,000,001 National League pitchers said, no, I don't really want to be part of that, right? At some point, they called him, and what's he supposed to do? Say, no, I don't feel like I have the tenure yet. If you get an opportunity to pitch in an All-Star game, you're going to say yes, and it's not a bad thing for baseball. But it might be a bad thing for baseball that so many guys ahead of him turned it down.
Well, that's right. And I was kind of laughing at the Phillies going off on the selection and really being nasty about it. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Your guy, Zach Wheeler, said no, thank you. either Sanchez or Suarez was invited, and he said no, thank you. And I think even Sanchez, he got the Phillies gave him an All-Star bonus anyway. So someone asked him about that, and he said, "Well, I got my bonus. I don't care."
Yeah.
And so you're right. It's like there's so many guys bailing out. And Ken Rosenthal had a great piece today in The Athletic for people who have a subscription where he talked about this problem. The All-Star game is lost. Believe me, man, I'm not one of these old dudes who goes outside and yells at the clouds. I'm not like that at all. But when I was a younger guy, Dave Glover and I have talked about this. Man, the All-Star games had all-stars,
Yeah.
They weren't like, well, we had all these pitchers bail out, so okay, these guys are way down on the depth chart, but let's ask them to come in. And like, how many true all-stars will be in this game? There will be a lot, don't get me wrong, but it's not. You'd like to see more purity to it, if that's the term.
Yeah, I also wonder if we need to come up with a better system that doesn't quite emphasize the fan voting so much. I know that MLB is desperate for marketing any which way it can get it, and grassroots, getting fans engaged in that way is not a bad way to do it, and maybe that the commercial payoffs benefit the game in the abstract enough to make it worth it. But, we have a lot wrapped up in this. And, guys have dollar amounts in their contracts, like you alluded to with Sanchez. Guys will all-star selections can come up in Hall of Fame cases, right? Where it's probably going to be discussed in a laundry list. I think of Joey Votto only ending up with 6 all-star selections because he was in a hellish room from his perspective of National League first baseman for so much of the prime of his career. He's going to be a marginal Hall of Fame guy, and having 10 instead of 6 could have made a difference. Those things can really add up, and I wonder if the Cardinals might be the team at the top of the list complaining about that, because for whatever reason, for all the Cardinals fans there are, they don't tend to vote a lot when it comes to all-star selections, and that's pretty much been true for a while now.
Yeah, and it just sort of goes hand in hand with the decrease in tickets sold per game. It's a weird time for St. Louis baseball these days, and I think Brendan Donovan was like the first homegrown player drafted and developed Cardinal to be picked even as a reserve in an All-Star game. I'm talking about position players since 2019. Paul DeYoung got a late bid to come onto the team. So the Cardinals, there has been a real all-star void in terms of position players in this organization. And I'm not talking about guys they acquired. I'm talking about guys they drafted and raised through their system. It's really been, it's just been a drought. It's just been a little bit of a famine going on with that. And I think that's indicative of why the Cardinals are in the shape that they're in. They're not a bad team. They're a pretty good team. I think they're going to have their second winning season in a row, but it doesn't, obviously that pales in comparison to years in the past where they were loaded with all-stars.
To your point about the all-stars, about the dudes, those guys are hard to acquire, whether it's in the trade market because of their prospect expense or in the free agent market because of the literal dollars expense. So maybe the best way for the Cardinals to get them is through the draft, and they haven't done that as effectively in recent years as they did for so many decades. So how about when we come back, we talk about how they're doing so far in this year's draft with their number 5 selection that they were pretty fortunate to have in the lottery and were able to hopefully capitalize on. Certainly that has some people buzzing. We'll take a break. We'll talk Cardinals draft class when we come back. Redbird Rush Hour on KMOX.
Summer is here. Time to enjoy baseball, barbecues, and
Heating and Cooling, a Daikin comfort dealer. The Miklasz family's been calling and relying on Saliga for about 16, 17 years now. And hey, we were late to that because the Saliga family, 4 generations, have been taking care of generations of St. Louisans since 1927. I mean, how's that for credibility? One family has continuously owned this business, and they're rounding into about 100 years coming up real soon, and they're still growing, and they're still getting busier, and they're still adding more families. Because those of us who have come to call on Saliga realize you got a lot going for you by doing that. Saliga, in our experience, sets the standard for honesty and knowledge, professionalism, prompt service. In our experience, also, Saliga has never tried to hustle us or talk us into an expensive solution. It's the exact opposite. Saliga Heating and Cooling has always looked for low-cost solutions to save us money, and they have saved us a lot of money. They service all makes and models, can handle your heating and cooling needs for home or business. I also recommend the Priority Club. It's a maintenance plan that will save you money by extending the life of your current equipment. We're in the Priority Club. It has absolutely extended the life of our equipment, which means we are benefiting from that economically. You also receive priority scheduling and some other perks. So if you want to find out more about this proud family-owned business, Saliga Heating and Cooling, you can call at 314-481-7333 or visit online at saligaheatingandcooling.com. Thank you.
Paul's new drone startup just lost its most genius computer scientist.
As you know, I'm a lawyer, so I take this very seriously. Mark is a great attorney. He has a great team. He is from St. Louis. He is local. Call 314-628-9999 or visit CantorInjuryLaw.com.
The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be solely based on advertisements.
You're listening to the Redbird Rush Hour on 104.1 KMOX.
Redbird Rush Hour continues. Nate Gatter, Bernie Miklasz. Bernie, let's get to a little quick talk on the Cardinals 2025 draft class, which is almost now complete with the draft reaching its last couple of rounds. The big storyline, of course, the number 5 overall pick the Cardinals got in the lottery, and they used it to select left-hander Liam Doyle out of Tennessee, the SEC pitcher of the year. He's touched 99 miles an hour from the left side. I don't know that a lot of folks thought he was going to be there at number 5 for the Cardinals. The UCSB right-hander Bremner going to the Angels at number 2 was a big surprise. To a lesser extent, Eli Willits going number 1, high school shortstop to Washington. And the Cardinals capitalized by getting a guy who certainly has the potential to be one of those dudes you're talking about.
Once he figured out that as his coach at Tennessee, St. Louis and Tony
Vitello.
No, Vitello. What am I saying? All of a sudden, you see, that's what happens when you live in St. Louis, man. All my Italian friends. So anyway, Vitello, of course. He got into shape. He realized, wait a minute, I got a chance to really do something special in this game. And he got into shape, and he's just a maniac now. I mean, this guy just overpowers hitters, and he's got a little bit of it's not unorthodox, but his delivery makes it really hard for hitters, even right-handed hitters, to pick up the release point and like what he's throwing. He doesn't give away what he's throwing at all. And he's developed a splitter, which is a great compliment to that 98-mile-an-hour heater. And, he also fills a need. I know the whole thing about, you take the best guy on the board. You can't worry about filling a need because sometimes it takes these draft picks years to get to the majors. But there are some times where a guy is the best on the board when you pick, and he does fill a need. So that made him an automatic choice. And I did not think he'd be there when I was doing my studying about these pitchers. I did not think he'd be there. I thought he would have been gone by number 5. So Doyle's a really exciting pick. And he what does he do? What do the Cardinals need? They need strikeout punch in the worst way. And I also think he'll be on a fast track to the majors, not this year, but probably next year, pretty early. And all of a sudden you see some strikeout guys lining up. Tekoa Roby, Quinn Matthews, this guy. And so, all of a sudden the Cardinals might go from a pitch to contact to rotation to more of a oomph type rotation. And that's exciting. They really need to do that.
It's a good point. Let's talk a little bit more about that drafting for need here in just a second after we pause for traffic on KMOX.
Traffic from the MichaelsFlooringOutlet.com Traffic Center.
Well, we still got that crash on westbound 64 in the city. This traffic reports the service at Chesterfield Fence and Deck. It looks like it's just partially in the right lane, mostly over to the shoulder, but it's still out there right just past the Tam overpass. Westbound 64 is still backed up. Not a solid jam, but it's pockets from Kings Highway out to that scene. That's still a little slow approaching Palace. And then in St. Charles County, west of Lake St. Louis Boulevard out to 70 is kind of busy. So it's getting better in the valley, especially. Southbound 270, you're slow through Ladue. After that, believe it or not, a good run down to 55. Northbound 270, Ron Dorset's a little heavy. North 170, approaching Natural Bridge to 70, slow. South 170 backs up Ladue to the Parkway, then it's slow down to 64. Westbound 70, barely a slowdown at the city limits and a little busy at 61. No big deal there. Southbound 55 is cleared out all the way down into Jeffco. Chesterfield Fence and Deck is your premier provider of fences, decks, patios, sunrooms, and more. Call them for a free estimate today. Now offering 48 months interest-free financing on your next outdoor project. Chesterfield Fence and Deck, chesterfieldfence.com. I'm Roger Brand at the MichaelsFlooringOutlet.com Traffic Center.
Bernie, you're talking about drafting for need, and normally that's the first thing you have to say to fans who are new to the Major League Draft is they say, hold on. So we got Mason Wynn at shortstop. Why are we drafting a shortstop? First of all, every infielder, everybody who's not going to play first base in the majors is drafted as a shortstop. Probably some guys who are going to play corner outfield in the majors are drafted as a shortstop. But beyond that, you just don't know what things are going to look like, especially if you're drafting a high school player. He might not be in the majors for 5, 6, 7 years. You don't know what the team is going to look like at that point. Maybe an exception for that, where there is a light one, is for some of these older college guys who you want to be able to move through the system quickly, who maybe you're going to start at high A or double A and advance pretty quickly. And the Cardinals have taken almost exclusively college players. In fact, they have drafted only one high school player. It was Ryan Mitchell with their second-round pick. Every other player the Cardinals have selected now through 19 rounds, 20 total selections, has been a college player. So clearly, especially with some of those guys up toward the top end who have spent 3 or 4 years post-high school playing ball at, in some cases, very high levels, like Liam Doyle, the SEC Pitcher of the Year, you're doing that because part of his value is that he could be in the majors in 2 years.
Yeah, and the Cardinals haven't had a fast-track draft pick in terms of starting pitcher that they drafted since Michael Wacha back in, I think he was the 2012 draft, but they shut him down once they drafted him because he had pitched so much at Texas A&M. And as everybody remembers, I mean, Michael Wacha was he was on the express lane to the major leagues. They don't win the pennant in 2013 without him. And I'm not saying I'm really not saying that anyone they drafted this year, including Doyle, is going to have that kind of immediate impact, but he will be here sooner, a lot sooner than guys who need to be developed. And I think one of the reasons why, if I may, that the Cardinals have drafted so many college players under Randy Flores, I think they're putting a special emphasis on plate discipline, and they love contact skills. And I think maybe that's an extension of Chaim Bloom. He's not telling them who to draft. Trust me, he's not. But I think they all kind of know each other and like kind of where the philosophy's gone. They want to have premium contact hitters who can drive the ball. They don't have to be 30 home run guys, but they can be 20, 22 home run guys who are going to be spraying doubles all over the place. I think they are looking for those kind of hitters. As far as the high school hitter that they drafted really quick, my friend Keith Law, who knows his stuff, he said that the kid they drafted out of Tennessee, who is Ryan Mitchell, he thought he was a first round bat, and he thought that he's a guy that had such tremendous contact skills. He's going to be a really good hitter in the major leagues. And also, he's going to be an outfielder, not an infielder. So, but they got an advanced hitter on the high school level, and they're not that easy to find. I really like that pick a lot.
We got to pause quickly to give you the Game Day Men's Health Peak Performer, which is sponsored by Game Day Men's Health. Get back to the top of your game, and that guy is Jose Fermin, who hit the 2-run homer yesterday that won the game for the Cardinals in the series finale against Atlanta. It took 76 games in the major leagues, 160 plate appearances, but Jose got his first career major league home run, and he is your Game Day Men's Health Peak Performer, sponsored by Game Day Men's Health. Get back to the top of your game. Let me touch on one other thing with the Cardinals draft class, Bernie, because you're talking about some guys who can be fast-tracked, and certainly Liam Doyle is in that category. Also in the competitive balance round B, which was their third overall selection at number 72, they took Tanner Franklin, Liam Doyle's Tennessee Volunteers teammate under, as you mentioned, St. Louisan, and former Missouri Tiger Tony Vitello, who is close friends as well with Max Scherzer, another former Mizzou Tiger and St. Louis, and they were teammates at Missouri. So a guy who knows a lot about identifying and developing pitchers, and the Cardinals liked a couple of guys off his staff, both of them hard throwers. Liam Doyle, the left-hander, has touched 99. Tanner Franklin, the right-hander, has touched 102. Franklin, I think in particular, you could see projecting as more of a back end of the bullpen type of guy. Some people have speculated that Doyle's stuff would play really well as a bullpen guy. Generally, if you're drafting a pitcher number 5 overall, you're doing it for him to start. How do you feel in the abstract, not necessarily with Doyle in particular, in the abstract with teams saying, well, we can get this guy to the major leagues very quickly as a reliever and then try to transition him back into a starter, a la, Adam Wainwright, great result, a la Jordan Hicks, maybe not quite as good a result?
Yeah, listen, that's a way to go. I mean, if the Cardinals were in a situation where, this is a hypothetical, where they really have a heck of a chance to make the playoffs, and Doyle's already out there pitching. I could see plugging him into the bullpen for a late run during the regular season. That's happened a lot. That's really not unusual. But as long as you remember that you drafted him to be a starter, and I everybody that I trust who evaluates prospects and have been doing it for a long time, they say, no, this guy is a starting pitcher. His stuff is projectable, and he's also developing another pitch that's going to make him even more hard to handle for hitters. It would be kind of wasting his talent to put him in the bullpen just because he throws hard and he can strike people out. So, and I agree with that entirely. The guy that they drafted in the 3rd round that you talked about from Tennessee, what was his name again? I'm really bad on names.
Franklin, the right-hander, Tanner Franklin.
I could absolutely see him in the Cardinals bullpen soon. Not maybe this year, but that sounds like a big horse reliever to me that, it's just going to throw wipeout pitches, right?
Yeah, no, his stuff, I think there's been some consistency here and there, those issues, which is the only way I think you get to pick 72 as a guy who has touched 102 miles an hour. If he was consistent, he probably would have gone in the top 10, certainly in the top 20 or 30, even projecting as a reliever. We got to take one final break. What do you say when we come back, we maybe take a couple stabs at home run derby picks? How does that sound?
That sounds good. Like it.
We'll do that after this. It's the Redbird Rush Hour on KMOX.
Just hearing the word IRS can make people break out in a cold sweat. No one wants to deal with the IRS, and now you don't have to. The good news is legal tax defense has been successful.
Redbird Rush Hour continues on the first day of the All-Star break. The Cardinals went into it with a win, albeit one that lasted well into the evening yesterday and reportedly cost Brendan Donovan the chance of making his flight to Atlanta. But the Cardinals made good by chartering him and his family a plane to make sure that he could get there for media availability today in advance of the Home Run Derby that will be getting underway shortly from Truist Park in suburban Atlanta. The 8 participants are James Wood from the Nationals, Brent Rooker from the Athletics, Junior Caminero from the Rays, O'Neal Cruz of the Pirates, Byron Buxton of the Twins, the Yankees, Jazz Chisholm Jr., Cal Raleigh, the Major League home run leader from the Mariners, and Matt Olson of the Braves hitting in his home ballpark. Bernie Miklasz, who out of that list has caught your eye?
Well, I'm overanalyzing this, of course, because I always do. But Truist Park.
Oh, we're missing Bernie's mic. Hold on, just 1 second. Getting it right on back, and we'll be able to hear him hopefully here in just a moment. Because he has plenty of thoughts, I know, on this home run derby field and the analysis. Because you can go any which way I think that you want. With the home run derby in any given year. One part of it is the home ballpark. One part of it is, a guy like Cal Raleigh who just has the most homers. Some of it is guys who pull the ball, guys who can spray it everywhere, maybe a little less valuable in the home run derby. Some of it is maybe just the guys who want it the most, the showmen, the younger players, somebody who's really in it, maybe for whom the bonus would mean the most. That could be a piece of it too. We had that conversation with the NBA Cup in sort of a different context, but the same thing. It contributes something for the players, the money to have that value to some of the younger guys as compared to somebody who's already made their name and made their money, as it were, in the case of somebody like Matt Olson. So I think you can look at this from a whole lot of different ways. Bernie, what's the primary thing that looks that you go to when you're analyzing a home run derby field, and where is that taking you with these 8 names?
I always like to see, the first thing I like to see is the experience, but there's not much experience in this group. But the thing I like to see is, I think guys who naturally pull the ball have an advantage because, it's just a more natural swing. They know what they have to do. This is kind of a no stress thing. You're not getting sliders, you're not getting sweepers, and pull side power is what goes. And so in that context, that ballpark is like the 7th best in the majors in terms of power for left-handed hitters. So I'm looking at James Wood. I'm looking at Matt Olson, but James Wood really intrigues me because he's got easy power on the pull side, but he also, if he doesn't pull the ball, boy, he hits line drive home runs to the opposite field. I think he can hit home runs to all fields. So I think he's really intriguing, and I think Junior Caminero is a dangerous guy too. Maybe I think I'm being kind of dumb for overlooking Olson. It's his home ballpark, but also overlooking Cal Raleigh, for 38 home runs. But sometimes you just look for someone who's not obvious, right?
Speaking of that, one of the things that I like is just a guy who's a showman, somebody who's going to want the stage, somebody for whom it's going to make a difference, it's going to be meaningful. And I wonder if we might see Jazz Chisholm, as a result, enjoy this stage a little bit and flash a few of those smiles and raise a few eyebrows. I don't know if he can win it, but I think that's the kind of guy who I always expect to really put the effort in to be at his best.
I can see him getting through the first round, putting on a show, and he has a lot of experience. He knows how that ballpark plays because of all his time with the Miami Marlins, so he knows that park well. I think that helps too. You know how the ball travels, things like that. So, no, I think he's an excellent sleeper pick. I really do.
Bernie, it has been a lot of fun to host this hour together. Always fun to work with you. Let's do it again soon, huh?
I really, really enjoyed it, and it's been too long. So thanks for helping out and jumping in. We're thrilled to have you hosting for us.
Well, I appreciate that. Bernie Miklasz, Nate Gatter with you on this Monday evening Redbird Rush Hour. Be sure to stay tuned on the other side of the news. Sports Open Line will be getting going. I'll be with you in for Matt Pauley here during the All-Star break. Jen Cease will visit with us to talk St. Louis City. Finally coming off a win, 2-1 over Portland yesterday. We'll talk about the Wimbledon Championships, the men's final between Alcaraz and center Mike Monaco of ESPN will be with us to discuss that. And Brian Walton of thecardinalnation.com will chat MLB draft. All of that to come. The news is next. This has been the Redbird Rush Hour on KMOX.
Hats off to family fun on Sunday, July 27th, when the Birds host the Padres. That day, 20,000 fans, 16 and older,